Into the end zone. Dylan Gabriel, a walk in the park. And Oregon gets their first lead of the ballgame.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, Ducks postgame traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light. Mountain Cold Refreshment. Choose chill. Celebrate responsibly. By Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved. By Mods PDX. The future of building is here. By Zoom Care. With more than 20 neighborhood clinics in Oregon and Southwest Washington, Zoom Care offers convenient access to same-day urgent and emergency care, plus an expanded primary care team, currently accepting new patients. Schedule or learn more at zoomcare.com. Bellagio's Pizza. Dough and sauce made fresh 6 days a week, right here in Wilsonville. And proud to be serving Northwest communities since 1996. Order online or through the app. By Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division. Don't let the game play you. For more information on problem gambling prevention and treatment resources, visit opgr.org. By Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration, in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, within winning distance. Audi Wilsonville, offering unmatched service to help you find the perfect car. Online at AudiWilsonville.com. Laurelhurst Market, more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. By Unitas Community Credit Union. Join the team at Unitas Community Credit Union to help you reach your financial goals. And by Langdon Farms Golf Club. There's no better course in the Northwest for year-round golf. Book your tee time at LangdonFarms.com. The Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan.
What is up, sports fans? Welcome into the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. No Ryan Buckley this week. Schultze sitting in with you along with the very, very well-traveled offensive lineman Will Ortner to break us all into some Oregon, I would say some good feelings, break it down like for some crazy, like good and bad feelings. It was kind of a tale of two games for this 37-34 Boise State Broncos win. It was, I would say, thrilling in some aspects. Oregon fans, you can exhale now. It definitely came down to the wire, but the Ducks, thankfully, barely found a way to pull off that heart-pounding 37-34 victory over a very good, a resilient Boise State team. Let's set the scene, of course, at the end. If you missed it, Atticus Zappington, the weight of the game on his shoulders, Will, calmly knocking down a 25-yard field goal as time expires to give Oregon the win. That makes 34 straight non-conference home victories for the Ducks, the longest active streak in the country, but we can't kid ourselves. This is why we're here to break this all down. Want to hear from you. There's a lot of people that are going to be driving up from the game still. Hit us up on the Vancouver Ford text line. I'd love to hear what your reactions to this very weird game were. 503-864-6FAN. This was not an easy win for the Oregon Ducks, Will. What were your initial takeaways? What were you happy about? And what scared you after, I would say, thankfully a win's a win, and you always got to celebrate a win. But another, I'd say, scary game for the Oregon Ducks.
I'd say, first off, you got to be excited about that defense. I really do think that you went against probably the best running back in the country right now, and it feels weird saying that holding him to 192 yards rushing is a victory, but aside from him just making people miss and running through tackles, in the fact of he's getting stopped at the line of scrimmage in Genty, and then he's jumping outside, and the ends weren't holding the edge. That's where all of his yardage came from, or it came from him running through 2 or 3 tackles that no other running back in the country is going to run through. Now, that being said, obviously, Coach Lapoy and Coach Lanning, they're going to have those guys in, going to visit the doctor, making some changes. Some people are going to have, a tough meeting or two in that defensive room. But I do feel like when I watched that defense today, you guys kept them in the game. The defense kept the offense in. And then offensively, hey, the explosive plays were found. I'm worried about what's going on in the passing game, though, when it comes between the offensive line and your quarterback. And it's It's an issue of your quarterback not trusting your offensive line. It's an issue of your offensive line not giving him any reason to trust you. And then it's also an issue of not understanding where the pressure is coming from, especially early. And I know we're going to dive into more of that as we get going, but that's worrisome. When I look at the good and the bad here, it's your quarterback needs to get some stuff figured out, and your offensive line needs to get some stuff figured out. So don't be shocked if you hear, hey, the offensive line and Dylan Gabriel were all rolling around in his minivan this week trying to figure out what some of their issues are, because right now, that's the biggest thing that's plaguing this team.
To address what you first said, and we're absolutely going to get into Dylan Gabriel and the offensive line. Also, the entire team really coming out pretty flat in the first few minutes of the game, and that makes me question, like, are we going to have another season just like last year where we're wondering if the Oregon Ducks, who are talented at every position, 4 or 5-star guys starting everywhere on the offense and defense, are we going to have to worry about them being unable to play a complete 60-minute game or get started slow, in the first part of the game or in the first part of the second half? But to address your first point, Ashton Jeanty, yeah, stud. I'm not sure that I'm mad at the defense giving up so many yards on him. It's just what it is. I believe Dan Lanning called Jeanty the best running back talent that he's seen since he's been at Oregon. He's going to be an NFL running back. I'm pretty sure he was at the top of the Heisman Trophy candidacy talk at the beginning of the season. You put him in with Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, and those two running backs are like the best in the country right now. And Jeanty showed it. 192 yards, 3 tutties, that 8-yard score that put Boise State up 34-27 in the fourth quarter. And Will, at that point, we were talking about this before the postgame show started. At that point, it was a 79% win probability for Boise State. That was about 10 minutes to go in the fourth. And you kind of wondered, like, oh my God, like this entire time I haven't really been scared that Oregon's going to lose this game. But at that point in the fourth quarter, you kind of wonder, like, okay, no, these serious thoughts of not only dealing, with this really great running back, but then watching Oregon's fledgling offense, or at least the offensive line, and then, letting sacks happen on Dylan Gabriel. We can talk about getting into that as well. But Boise State was not going down without a fight, but there were so many things lacking for Oregon's team. So I don't want to get into the deep conversations that we had last season about it could be a team with really talented players that starts really slowly. I don't think that's a good team. I do think that is usually a bad team. But what I see, at least at this point, Will, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if it's discipline issues. It's obviously not a talent issue, or if it's just an execution issue, which kind of goes into a discipline issue maybe. But it's just odd to me, and we're going to get into some of the stats here. Just my initial takeaways, that it's odd to me that now the first 2 weeks of the season for Oregon against teams that they should be slamming by 30 to 40 points, basically slipping by them. And it makes me worried that Oregon's going to drop another couple spots in the AP top 25.
I'm going to pump the brakes on slamming Boise State by 30. You shouldn't have slammed this Boise State team by 30. Okay. There's a reason why they're one of the favorites to be that group of 5 to make it into the playoff.
That's
now, that
fair.
being said, if this Oregon team is supposed to play up to the potential, or, if it's on paper, this is the paper matchup that a lot of people like to go into, yeah, you should probably beat them by multiple scores, especially when you're at home. That being said, I really think right now on that offensive line, you're going through and you're finally seeing for the first time in a couple of years what it's like to not have a center like Alex Forsythe, or to not have a Jackson Powers Johnson there at that center position. You are spoiled for multiple years, right, with these great centers. And I'm not saying that the center that you've got going right now isn't a great center, right?
But when you have Laulu?
When you have, and he wasn't playing center that entire game, right? There were parts where he was out at right guard, and you saw some struggles there. So they're continuing to shuffle that offensive line group around. They've had some injuries in that room during camp.
Yeah.
So they're not able to go with the starting offensive line that they wanted. And the problem with offensive line play is it's really 5 different positions. But a lot of people will look at it and go, well, that's just one position. If you can play guard, you can play tackle. And it's completely different from playing guard on the right side to playing tackle on the right side to playing guard on the left side to playing tackle on the left side. Now, the techniques for the most part are still the same. But when it comes to What type of defensive end am I going against? What type of rush, what type of blitz might the other team try and bring against me? And then honestly, you're doing it backwards. If I'm a left-sided offensive lineman and that's the side that I play, and now I moved over to the right side, everything is backwards for me. And it's going to take a second to adjust to that. So when you're continuing to adjust and you continue to have different centers, they're calling the game differently, they're IDing the mic differently, you're working with a different person when it comes to your double teams, to your triple teams. If you're running a zone play, all 5 guys have to be working in unison as one, and you have to be able to make adjustments without talking to each other. So you have to see the game the exact same way. And so when you're continuing to move different players around into different positions, and it's changing each week, each drive, each series, those are going to be issues that you have that you don't realize that you have. Now, that being said, at the end of the game, you move Poncho over to center, right? And you get more of a crew that it felt like they were working in unison in the second half. That's where you saw a stark difference in the run game. That's where Jordan James, a lot of his runs that were going for 3 and 4 earlier in the game, now all of a sudden you're seeing offensive linemen get onto linebackers, and those 3 or 4 yard runs are now turning into 7, 8, 9 yard runs. I mean, shoot, it feels like we're going back to it, but it's the second week in a row where I feel like Jordan James left some yards out on the table just by getting shoelace tackled at the last minute. It's going to take time. It's very clear to me right now, Dillon Gabriel, with the continued movement in the offensive line and not knowing who's going to be his center series after series, or who's going to be his guard, or really who's going to be this 5 O-line guy unit, he's not comfortable. That being completely said, this isn't all on the offensive line, and a lot of people are going to want to blame the O-line. Dillon Gabriel has a lot of issues right now when it comes to IDing a blitz or just getting the ball out of his hands to begin with. The very first sack that he had, your 5 offensive linemen cut. Now, to be fair, Connerly whiffed. It was a bad cut from an offensive lineman.
Looked like he let him right by.
Right. That ball, if they're all 5 cutting, should still be out of your hands in 1 second. You don't have a second progression there. You either throw to your slant or your bubble or whatever route that you have that you are supposed to throw that ball to right then, or you better run it or you better throw it away because you're going to get hit.
It's your quick option.
Gabriel almost went back to the left side like he had another route that he could throw to there. There just isn't enough time when offensive linemen are cutting. Then, when it comes to his second and third sack, both times Boise State brought in extra guy. You had 5 men protecting the first time, you had 6 guys protecting the second time. And if Boise State is going to bring a 7th rusher when you have 6, 1 guy is coming free and you need to get rid of the ball. Ideally, you get rid of the ball where the blitzer is coming from. And it felt like in those spots, not only did Gabriel not know where the blitz was coming from, he didn't realize that there was going to be an extra defender rushing him and he needed to get the ball out of his hands quickly. So while the offensive line has a lot of things that they need to shore up, and it feels like you have your 5 offensive line group now, you finally have your 5, and this is the 5 that you should go with the rest of the way, there is some cleaning up that they have to do in that quarterback room.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit more with you when we get into our offensive discussion, Will, specifically about kind of moving guys around the offensive line and how that is conducive or not conducive to, getting right and working with guys. Because, 3 of these guys, I know that we saw some bad penalties from Cornelius last week lining up basically off sides, but Johnny, Marcus Harper, Josh Connerly, they've all been here. I would say Poncho Laulu also is a guy that you can consider, a veteran. He played a lot of snaps last season. So essentially you've got 4 guys, and then you're hoping to get Matthew Bedford back as soon as you can. But obviously having to throw Pickard in, and then instead of him, you mentioned the offensive line looking a little bit better at times. They threw Nishad Strother in, and I believe that was allowing Poncho to move back over to center. So you could see Oregon playing with some different offensive line combinations tonight. I do think they did find one that works. So we'll dive into that and figure out if that's what Oregon's going to have to do going forward. Hopefully they can get Bedford back soon. But you mentioned, of course, Dillon Gabriel, not too shabby, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, but a very rough night. You're right, a very rough night behind that offensive line. Sacked 4 times in the first half alone, I think 5 total. And, of course, just like in the fourth quarter when Oregon was trailing to Boise State, they trailed to Boise State at halftime 20-14. Thankfully, special teams came through for Oregon, and we've got to talk about some special teams and kind of the rare way, Will, that Oregon got its victory. But I would be remiss if we did not visit first our Game Day Secret Score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
And on the theme of special teams, our Game Day Secret Score is 100. Game Day Secret Score is going to be 100, which is the length of Whittington's kickoff return for Tutty. I guess Jaden Lamar technically gets credit for that because he picked up Kenny Whittington's fumble, but Whittington runs it in for a kickoff return for touchdown, 100 yards in length, to get the Ducks the lead, to get them tied late in the game. So give the secret score 100 to Dirt and Sprague. Remember to listen in the 7 a.m. hour on Monday to Dirt and Sprague for the cue to text in. If you win, you get a $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. More than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. All right, coming up next, we're going to get to some of your texts and some of your YouTube comments. Got some pretty fired up Duck fans that are sitting in their cars and chatting on the YouTube, so we want to get into that. But first, we're going to talk to NFL stud and former Duck Anthony Newman about his takeaways from Oregon's 37-34 win over Boise State. But first, it's time for Ducks Game Day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, you're going to get some slight delays as you're heading back from Autzen Stadium. Couple Smokies down in Eugene as well, so make sure that you go in the speed limit so you can get back home nice and safe. It's 75 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks post-game forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Sunday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Duck fans, game day is here, and you need fuel to cheer on Oregon. Hey, it's Dusty, and at Victor Rico's
Ducks football, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
A Jekyll and Hyde kind of football game in Eugene, Oregon, getting the 37-34 win over the Boise State Broncos. Their first ever win in Oregon program history over the Broncos, now 1-4 all-time against Boise State. Here to talk about it, give his initial takeaways, and dive into the crappy offensive line and the much better play on defense is former Duck and NFL stud Anthony Newman. Appreciate Anthony coming on. What's up, Q? Good to have you on. I know you've had a busy travel day, my friend, but hope you enjoyed taking in the game, at least some of it, some enjoyment, I guess.
Well, yeah. To me, it was a great. For me, it was a great day because I had two Oregon teams that beat a Boise team. We had our high school. We played this morning in Eagle, Idaho.
Okay.
And we played Eagle High School and beat them 51-14.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was nice. It was an early game, 11 o'clock game. So
Ooh.
we were up at 6 for pregame meal.
Oh, how was that different? Because the guys usually used to playing a little later, especially in high school. That throws a team off? It just always does, right?
It did, but what we did is a couple of times we practiced in the morning. We had practice like at 6 o'clock in the morning here during the week to kind of get used to it, because it's different. I mean, to play at 11 o'clock and they're an hour ahead, so it threw us off a little bit. It threw us.
Yeah, no, it's just an interesting preview too, how those kids are going to have to basically not only that's kind of a not normal thing for high school kids, but like week to week, in college, going to have to basically get their schedules switched every 6 days. So
it's terrible, but we got through it. And then tonight, watching the Duck game, I don't know if I was going to make this. This game was killing me. The consistency, where is it? There's no consistency with this football team. It's just killing me.
Yeah, do you think, I mean, we can start, Anthony, I guess. What is the biggest concern for you? Because I'm wondering about the consistency, and frankly, I don't like to use the word consistency when it comes to sports because you're kind of supposed to be good, but these aren't necessarily pro athletes, they're college. So I think you can kind of talk a little bit more about, good and bad. And in the college ranks of sports, crazy things happen every week. And I do wonder, though, on top of that, like if the Oregon Ducks are a little bit overhyped, but tell me what your most glaring concern was from today's 37-34 win that has you worried about that inconsistent play.
Well, it is. It's being consistent, and when I talk about being consistent, it's individual players that you need to execute. So you got offensive linemen not sticking with their blocks, and Dylan Gabriel doesn't have any time to throw the football. You have the offensive linemen not picking up blocks. Guys coming off the edge scot-free. Wait, what's going on here? And then you got your fumbles. And then there's one play where the running backs are running well. Next thing you know, they're going down with one guy tackling them. It's just like, and then defense, all of a sudden they're playing good to get to the quarterback. In the next series, Boise State just drives all the way down the field and scores. Like, okay, wait, what's going on here? And that, playing in the NFL, that's all we heard all the time is, if you want to play in this league, you need to be consistent. If you want to be good and you have a good team, you have to play consistent and be consistent every single day, every single game throughout the whole season. I don't see that right now with this Oregon football team.
Anthony, I know that Ashton Genty, when you're playing up against a running back that is his caliber, he's going to get his yards, right? But it felt
Correct.
like Oregon would stop the initial hole that Boise State was trying to run to, and then he would bounce outside, and either the outside backer or the defensive end wasn't holding the edge. Am I off base there? Is that why he was able to have such a big run game? Or am I just missing something completely, and sometimes their guy just is better than the other guys?
Yeah, well, this kid is the real deal. Let's give him credit. I mean, he ran for 192 yards on 25 carries, but he has great balance, great vision. He has speed. He's an NFL-type back. So he's playing against kids that are in college, and he's in college now, but he's going into the NFL. But he's at a different level. He really is. And sometimes you got to give those guys credit. But what you got to do is you can't allow them to beat you like that. You gotta try to control the yards. Or maybe, okay, he gets 120 yards against us, 100, maybe 30 yards, maybe 140. 190, he's putting it on you. And then you see a lot of it. There were broken tackles, yak yards. You got to grab on. You got to hold on. But give him credit. This guy can play. He's one of the old school running backs that we haven't seen in a long time that can take it 60 at any time.
You're not wrong, Anthony. And talk about really how a defense is supposed to contain such a stud running back like Ashton Gianti. I mean, are you forced into making, Maddox Madsen be the one that beats you? Oregon supposedly has a superior secondary. Didn't necessarily look like that at all times today. But what does a defense do? Do you just try to make the lesser of two evils the one that you deal with?
It's real simple. We call it RP, relentless pursuit to the football.
Yeah.
You have to get all 11 guys to the football on every play. So this guy's good. He's going to fake a couple of guys out. He may break a few tackles, but he can't beat one or two guys. He can't beat 11 guys. He can fake out a couple of guys, but he can't beat all 11. So if we all get there and he's faking guys out left and right, and finally there's too many guys for him to fake out, he goes down. We start to control him a little bit. That's what we had to do with the great Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders is going to fake a couple of guys out. You're going to miss Barry Sanders one-on-one. You're not going to tackle him one-on-one. But if I got my 9 or 10 guys coming to help me, then we have a chance. But other than that, if you don't have RP, relentless pursuit to the football, you don't have a chance.
Anthony, it felt like it was a big boom or bust day offensively. Obviously, Evan Stewart had a couple big plays, a touchdown. Trayshawn Holden had a big play for a touchdown. What are you noticing from the wide receivers, and why were they able to get so many explosive plays against that Boise State secondary?
Well, I think there would have been more if the offensive line could sustain blocks. I mean, these receivers are getting downfield, and they're open all the time. I'm not going to lie. Evan Stewart can run. That kid, he can go. And then Trayshawn Holden, I mean, come on. I mean, his stride is a long stride. So, these guys are open. And when Dylan wants to throw the football and be in a pocket, he needs space. Every time he turns around, he's getting hit. And that bothers a quarterback. I mean, I'm not a quarterback, but I wouldn't want to get hit every time I'm dropping back. Now I'm trying to throw a deep ball, and wait, who's coming at me? On my right side or my left side? Let me get rid of this ball. And then he overthrows somebody. So if he had a little bit more protection, I think he would do better, or these guys who are open down the field can maybe have a connection in catching the ball.
All right, Anthony, really appreciate you, man. We've, I think, taken up enough of your time. It's late. I know there are a lot of Duck fans still out there on the road that are they're excited about the win, but definitely questioning some aspects of the Ducks' offensive line and spots on the defense. So thank you so much for taking the time, offering your knowledge, Anthony, coming on and breaking it all down for us. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, waving him as he goes. Appreciate it, Anthony. Former Duck and NFL stud Anthony Newman joining the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. When we come back, I want to hear from y'all. We're going to hit some text messages that I've seen talking about this Ducks performance, 37-34 win over Boise State. Also looking at some YouTube comments as well, but please hit us up on the Vancouver Ford text line if you want us to react to any of your thoughts about Oregon's win. First ever over Boise State at Autzen Stadium tonight. But first, we got to get to Ducks game day traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes, it's brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, it's going to take you an hour 45 to get all the way back from Autzen Stadium. You got some slowdown going on in about the southern Salem area. You've also got a couple of Smokies right as you're getting into Portland, so make sure that you're going the speed limit so you can get back safely. It's 75 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Don't let the game play you. Sports betting is popular among our
And Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
A Schulte and Will edition of the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. Here breaking down everything about the 37-34 win for the number 7 Oregon Ducks over the Boise State Broncos. The first ever win for Oregon in their program history against Boise State. 0-3. Could not believe that they finally got it, but what a scary way that game finished out. Was talking about the win probability essentially with 10 minutes to go being at 79% for Boise State, and Will was asking me, like, how do you figure that? I kind of scoff a little bit at those numbers projections, or if you're Sook, you say scolf. But it's basically just like a combination of, an algorithm running the chances, as opposed to how many possessions a team is going to get that they're going to score. And I think at that point, a 79% chance Boise State with a 34-27 lead.
Sounds like nerd speak. Don't believe it.
It's
not buying it.
It's a little nerd speak, but what I'm saying is Oregon was
real.
able to tie this game and win it in an incredibly rare fashion. And that rare fashion, obviously, the tie being that Noah Whittington 100-yard touchdown kickoff return that ended up being credited, I believe, to Jade Lamar, as well as a Tez Johnson punt return. And I want to get into a couple of comments here in just a second, Will, from the Vancouver Ford text line and from YouTube. But I want to ask you, so these special teams, which is awesome, these special teams touchdowns, which don't happen very often, basically allowing the Ducks to get the win, really helping the Ducks to get the win. That this doesn't happen very often, Will. So I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the breakdown. I see stats that I like. Jordan James, 102 yards on 17 carries, 6 yards average carry. Like I see that the run is being established. That is good. Maybe Oregon's line offensively had a little bit of a bounce back in that regard, but not quite sure with the 2 special teams touchdowns needed that Oregon's going to be able to win games in the same fashion going forward. It's kind of a special one.
No, I mean, we knew going into this game that you were going to really ID what this Oregon team was. Did they really sleepwalk through Idaho? Or are there real glaring issues that you need to address? Now, don't get me wrong. Boise State is not some slappy from the Mountain West Conference. This is a team that people have picked to win the Mountain West, and they have a legitimate shot at being the top-ranked Group of 5 team to make it into the playoffs.
And they're the traditional blue blood killer. They've always been this.
They are a very, very good football team that's going to win a lot of games, and I wouldn't be shocked if this is the only blemish on their schedule this year, right? That being said, it needed to look a certain way. There's a standard of play that you need to play to, and right now Oregon isn't doing it, and they're not doing it on the offensive side of the ball in the trenches. That being said, it feels like in the end of that second quarter, you found your offensive line group. It's still going to take some time for them to get used to playing together, making their changes, and understanding how in a zone, when you're running zone right and everyone's taking that cylinder step to the right, and now you have to surge as an offensive lineman, and as a right guard, you have to trust that your right tackle is going to move to the right guy without talking. And you also have to trust as a right tackle that the left tackle all the way at the back of the line, he's going to do his job without talking to you, and you see it all the same. That's going to take a couple of games. Remember last year, Dusty brought this up on Danny and Dusty this week, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. We were saying similar things about the Oregon offensive line against Texas Tech. You ended up being runner-ups for the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that that's what this offensive line is. I don't think that they're there yet. Maybe they'll reach their full potential by the end of the year. But they need more time together, and they need more time with Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel needs to sit in the quarterback film room and understand where blitzes are coming from. He was shocked multiple times in this game, and there were even a couple of times where he escaped into the sack. He escaped where the pressure was coming from, and it's because he doesn't understand where that blitz is coming from on the defense. Bo Nix was great at this. He knew where the blitz was coming from. He would replace where that blitz was coming with the ball to a one-on-one wide receiver going up against a man corner. He knew, hey, the blitz is coming from my left. I need this ball to get out to the left, and it needs to get out fast. And right now, I don't believe that Dillon Gabriel knows where he needs the ball to get out, and he doesn't see the blitz coming. He's shocked by it. And then he gets happy feet, he gets jittery, and so then he runs into another sack, or he runs out of the pocket quickly before a deep ball can develop. These wide receivers showed all game that at any moment you can hit a big play. It just takes you being in the pocket, and it takes the offensive line giving you that confidence to be able to stand in there and deliver a strike.
Dillon Gabriel listed at what, like 5'11"? He ain't 5'11".
He's 5'9".
5'10", 5'9". I was asking you, it's like, why can't he get the ball over the defensive line? Why does it keep getting tipped? He's short. And yeah, he is. He's like 4+ inches shorter than Bo Nix. I interviewed Bo Nix several times last year. Dude really is legitimately like 6'2", 6'3". He can see over the line. But to the Vancouver Ford text line and the YouTube chat, a really great gaggle of comments coming in from both sections. First, Port Blazers Fool said a few minutes ago, talk about growing pains, 2 tough wins, the days of blowing out teams by 30+ appear to be over. And I'm not sure he's actually just talking about like the Ducks in that regard. We had quite a few almost upsets today and a couple of upsets as well. I cannot believe I'm saying Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame, 16-14. We can go over that when we go over the rest of the top 25 and Big Ten schedule before we wrap up the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But it is seeming to be with, NIL and the way teams kind of are able to operate now with the money above board and with donors able to legitimately give kids money, maybe evening out a little bit more than we thought. So not quite sure that, I didn't really expect, I hoped that Oregon would win by 2-3 touchdowns over Boise State. Boise State is good. And then once you get in to the first quarter, okay, that's not happening. But to your point, wanting to see something, wanting this game to look a certain way, that's kind of what Port Blazer Fool is talking about. The Ducks traditionally just are a lot better than that. And even at a season following a 70 or 80-7 blowout of PSU, I think it does scare you as a Duck fan, traditionally used to seeing these kinds of performances. Now just seemingly, it's a lot more even now, even if you're an FCS school, apparently.
It's not a lot more even. You're just playing down to your competition right now. Yeah. But also, Idaho, they beat Wyoming this week. So you're not playing. It's not like you're playing a slappy from the FCS. It's not like you're playing a slappy from the Mountain West. But you better figure it out, because right now you got some serious problems, and it starts in that offensive line. That being said, you get that offensive line room fixed, you get your quarterback right, you go back to looking like the offense that you could be, because you saw flashes of it this week. Last week, you didn't really see anything. You can lean your hat on, hey, at any moment, we've got 3 wide receivers that can take any ball in any route combination to the house, and there's a 4th one that's getting healthy too. So those are good things that you can hang your hat on.
And we'll wrap it up with this here before we move on to our next segment. I've got a great question for you, Will, for our next segment. Vancouver Ford text line says, this team makes no sense. On paper, they should be massively better. It's like going to a barbecue joint, picking your favorite items out, brisket, pulled pork, mac and cheese, yet it's like they were all thrown into a blender to make a barbecue smoothie. It's just not working together. I think that's actually a great comparison. You see 4 or 5 different aspects of the team working well, but it's not a conducive unit yet. And that is the scary part for Oregon fans. Yay, we beat Boise State for the first time in our program history, but darn it, it was not how it was supposed to look. And speaking of games being how they're supposed to look, Will, I want to ask you, does the start of Oregon's season, 2-0, but some pretty scary games along the way, does that cause you to question whether or not they're going to be able to compete in the Big Ten like people thought, against some much bigger lines, against much more talent in the trenches? We'll address that coming up next here on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, time for Ducks game day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, it's still going to take you about an hour 45 to get back. So if you left Autzen, you're going to get home right about 1 a.m. It's still a little bit of slowdown just south of Salem. A couple of Smokies out, so make sure you're going the speed limit and get back home safely. 65 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
If a Coors Light is enjoyed in the evergreen forests or on the mountain trails of Oregon and no one is around to hear it, does it still provide the ultimate in refreshment?
Going left side, got him, touchdown. Boise State, wide open. Cameron Kemper, I say wide open. He had somebody with him, but way off of him.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Schulte and Will sitting in with you for this edition of the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, breaking down everything about Oregon's 37-34 win over Boise State. The number 7 Ducks. I kind of wonder where they're going to be after tonight's win. They slid from 3 to 7 in the AP poll after their loss, or their win to Idaho. Kind of felt like a loss with the slide in the polls, and you wonder if Oregon just slipping by with a field goal is going to cause voters to put them down a couple of more steps. One more take from the Vancouver Ford text line. Ducks were favored by 19. Nothing has changed, and things will only get worse. And that's something that I kind of wanted to address, Will, in my question here with Oregon, of course, looking okay in some aspects, but their offensive line, still an issue. 4 of 12 on third down. That's a huge issue. Lots of penalties. So we're just kind of having a lot of miscommunication still. 9 penalties, 74 yards. That didn't end up affecting you, but it's because it was Boise State. If you commit those penalties against Ohio State, good luck. You're gone. Going back to Autzen very quickly, or going back home from Autzen very quickly, excuse me. But then also 2 turnovers, which were both fumbles in the backfield. I don't think Bo Nix fumbled at all in his career at Oregon, and I guess that we were super, super lucky to see, such a skilled quarterback and able to not only, set records for the highest completion percentage in all of college football, but also be one of the best ever at taking care of the ball. So, Will, with all of these issues now that we see Gabriel struggling to hold on to the ball, the offense not converting on critical third downs, giving Boise State, not a Big Ten team, a chance to stay in this game, and I get it. Boise State is supposedly going to be in at the end of the discussion with the college football playoff this year. I get that. But does the start by Oregon this year, especially on the offensive line, because we all know college football's won in the trenches, does this cause you to question, Will, whether or not they're able to compete in the Big Ten?
No, not right now.
Really?
You're not in the Big Ten, no. If you go out against Oregon State and you fix the issues that you have, They're pretty simple. You'll be okay. You also get a nice lead in. You get a week off. Then you get UCLA, and you get your first test against Ohio State. Look, I'm not worried about what they're going to do against Ohio State. I'm not worried about what they're going to do against Big Ten competition. I'm worried about how they're going to fix the issues that they have. If those issues get fixed, they're going to be plenty fine. The problem is, do you have the people in the room to get it fixed? I think you do, and you'll be okay. Right now, when you look at their third down issues, the reason their third down sucked is because they were third and long all the game. They struggled up multiple times on first down and second down, gave up sacks, had bad penalties, and now it's 3rd and 7. There's not a lot of plays designed to get a first down on 3rd and 7. Also, the defense gets to pin their ears back. They get to run the craziest blitz they've drawn up. They get to have stunts and twists, all these different things that they don't normally get to do. The reason that Oregon was so good on third down in seasons previous is because you had it in 3rd and manageable. It's 3rd and 2. I can do a lot of things at 3rd and 2. I can run a bunch of different routes. I can hand the ball off. I can run different RPOs. And it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. There's like 5 plays in my playbook that I can call. And when you keep getting put back into that situation, that's where those mistakes happen. The turnovers. Man, I'll tell you what, when you put your helmet right on a ball, it's really hard to hold on to it. Now, that being said, Oregon, keep that ball nice, high and tight with your tight end that made the first fumble. At the same point, that's a pretty good helmet placement there by the Boise State tackler. You put your helmet right on the ball. The Dylan Gabriel one, that's inexcusable. You have a bad situation where Gabriel is clearly saying something. The offensive line snaps the ball. The reason that ball gets snapped is because the center thinks he hears the hut call or the go or whatever the hot word is, and Gabriel didn't give it to him. So is that because Gabriel didn't come up and, hey, easy line, easy, we're going through changes? Because that's a pretty clear indication of what's happening. Or does Gabriel just start going through changes? The O-lineman's so keyed up, he snaps the ball. Those are things that you got to fix. But if you're Dylan Gabriel, as soon as you get that ball and you're running for that first down, that's fantastic. But you better hold on to that football. When you don't hold on to that football, when you go into the line of scrimmage and you have the ball way out here, that allows that defense to go and rip at that ball. They're opportunistic. That's how they're coached at Boise State because they're a good football team. You got to have 2 hands on the football in that spot, and you can't make a bad play worse.
And I will say, there are positives. I did see amazing catches by Evan Stewart. The touchdown by him and Trayshawn Holden were both very clean. Dylan Gabriel obviously found the open guy there, but if the offensive line is struggling to protect him, as you see, or as you said, Will, earlier in the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show, it seems like they found their group near the end of the game going forward. So hopefully they can maybe get with Dylan this week and actually know who's protecting him. And yeah, like you said, maybe he can take them all for a ride in the van or something, and they can figure out what.
Go to the river.
Yeah, go to the river, figure out exactly what is ailing them, and get right.
There?
Why not?
In the van?
Why not?
Down by the river?
In a van down by the river. And then maybe Jordan James will actually run for like 150 yards. It'd be nice to see him get a tutty in this game. But once again, a weird game, a very Jekyll and Hyde game for Oregon. 37-34 win over the Boise State Broncos, first ever in program history. But 2 special teams touchdowns needed to do it. So we're going to continue to break this down. When we come back, I did want to ask Will a little bit more about the offensive line. We're also going to get into a conversation about the defense. Definitely a little bit better for Oregon tonight. And if there are any concerns about seeing Ashton Jeanty run for so many touchdowns. I mean, he's one of the best running backs in the country. Doesn't give me much pause, but I wanted to ask Will if it gives him pause. So we'll get to all that coming up next. But now it's time for Ducks Game Day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order online or for delivery or pickup at victorricos.com for your game day celebration. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, there's a lot of slowdown in Salem. Looks like it's going to be slow going from there. The rest of the way, though, it should be clear as you make your way back to Portland. Not too many Smokies out, so make sure you're still going the speed limit, though. You want to be safe getting back home. 65 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks post-game forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Gabriel has got back to throw. Sits, looks, wants to go deep down the middle. He's got him. Touchdown, Oregon.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, Ducks postgame traffic reports, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods BDS, Victor Rico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. The Ducks postgame scoreboard show on 1080 The Fan.
What is up, sports fans? Schultze and Will reacting to Oregon's 37-34 win with you until 1 o'clock. I know a lot of Ducks fans still on the road. Hopefully you're safely making your way up I-5 or 99W or whichever side roads you decided to take. And you're very, very happy that at least Oregon got the win, 37-34 over Boise State, but not necessarily happy about how they did it. I heard Coach Lanning's sound clip kind of getting leaked from the locker room or whatever. They didn't leak it. They wanted to tape it and then release it. But essentially Lanning saying that he was disappointed, not with the result, but with the process in Oregon's 24-14 win over Idaho. I would say that he's probably a bit more excited about how they got tonight's win, but also still very frustrated with the process. And Will, I do want to ask a little bit more about the offensive line, and we'll switch gears and get to the defense here coming up in a couple more segments. But I do want to check in with our line to watch from earlier in the day in the pregame show today. Andy Dirt Johnson, usually Anthony Newman and Dusty Hara all gave their picks for who they thought would win and by how much. Anthony was not on the show other than for just a phone call this morning. So let's try to see exactly how Dirt and Dusty did. We'll go with Dusty first. Win by 2 scores. Not quite there. And that is something I think I said in the last segment. I kind of hoped that they would win by like 2, maybe 3 scores. Will, you mentioned the game needing to look a certain way. That's how people thought it would look. And I think that was the prevailing, I'm not even just going to say hope, but I'm just going to say assumption from Ducks fans, because we all kind of thought that this was a get-right week, or we hoped that this was a get-right week, and Oregon traditionally hasn't. If you look back, like after really bad losses, Bill Oram of the Oregonian or Oregon Live put this in his article a couple of days ago. Basically, Oregon is really good at rebounding from bad performances. After a loss to Washington in 2022, they rallied to a gritty win over 10th-ranked Utah. Bo Nix playing on one leg during that, and then the Ducks following up last year's loss at Washington with a nice wire-to-wire win over Washington State. So I do wish that it would have been by 2 touchdowns today. I think that's what we all thought it was going to be.
Well, you also have to remember right now is you're seeing what the growing pains at times are of getting a transfer quarterback. Like, remember, when Bo Nix came through, I know you played Georgia, but it wasn't pretty. And then he went through a couple games where you were playing inferior opponents, and he was able to get used to the system. And even in his spot, it's not a true he's coming into a new system, because Dillingham was his dang offensive coordinator, or at least his QB coach when he was at Auburn.
Guys, at my wedding!
There was already some rapport going through there, right? Dylan Gabriel doesn't have that. It's going to take some time. It's going to take him time to get used to the receivers that he has, but it's clear that it's going to take him time to understand what the offense is trying to do and how defenses are going to try and stop him. I'm sure that he's figured out what the offense wants him to do. He's a good quarterback. There's a reason why he was coming into the year the number 2 voted guy for Heisman, right? Like, he is the guy that all the sports books, all the Vegas sharps said.
He's the fave.
He's the second favorite behind Carson Beck. There's a reason. He's a good quarterback, but it takes time to gel. And right now he hasn't had an opportunity to really build trust in that offensive line. And you can see him be skittish, and it's affecting his play right now. The offensive line has to get better, and Dylan Gabriel has to get better. But if those 2 spots get better, watch out.
And Andy Dirt Johnson's prediction, even more boisterous than Dusty's, 49-20. That is what Dirt thought it was going to be today. Unfortunately, neither was right. And I'm not trying to knock on the guys. I thought it was going to be, like I've said multiple times, a 2 or 3 touchdown victory. So I was in the same mindset that they were. And I think a lot of Ducks fans, happy about the win, though, still got our balloon popped. All right, well, let's switch gears. Going into our next segment, of course, we've got to get to our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game, but also want to get into the defense a little and, kind of wondering if it is a big deal that Oregon allowed so many yards against Ashton Janty, future NFL running back, even according to Dan Lanning, and talk about how I think Maddox Madsen kind of owned a little bit of the Oregon secondary at times tonight, and minus a couple of drops, I feel like that would have gone totally different for Oregon. So we'll get to all of that coming up next. But right now, it's time for Ducks Game Day Traffic and Weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, it is going to be smooth sailing. You're still seeing a nice slowdown there in Salem. Looks like most of the fans coming back from Autzen going to Portland. That's kind of where everyone is stuck. There's a little bit of slowdown as well once you get to Portland. Couple smokies, so make sure that you travel safely. It's 64 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Bellagio's Pizza, Northwest owned and operated since 1996. This
from the likes of, Keenan Howery and Demetrius Williams, like hoping for guys to transfer over here like Jawan Johnson. And now we've got the studs from Troy Franklin on, of course, to Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson. And Tez didn't even do anything today. Like, it's obviously in the wide receiving
he did one
core,
thing that was really big.
but he did do a huge thing on special teams, and that was the punt return. But really quickly, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about Oregon's defense. Of course, 37-34, Oregon, number 7 in the country, gets the win over the Boise State Broncos, their first ever in program history. But we saw, I would say, better play from the defensive side of the ball, but still some inconsistencies, a word that I really hate when it comes to the world of sports. For instance, that roughing the passer penalty seems to be a pretty easy call to set the Broncos up for a score near the end of the first quarter. It really didn't bother me too much at the time, but then you kind of started to see some other mental mistakes happening on the defensive side of the ball that, I think at another point, if Cameron Camper hadn't let a ball go right through his hands in the first quarter, that would have been a Boise State touchdown to take the lead at that point. So, I saw guys flying around today. Bryce Betcher at the end of the game, he made a couple of huge plays. Obviously, Jordan Birch and Jeffrey Bossa both in on it, but really on the ends, you're talking about like Matayo Uyunglele and Jordan Birch holding that down along with along with Derek Harmon, but also Tysheem and Brandon getting quite a few tackles in as well. Brandon Johnson really was a big effect on the Boise State offense. Just not, I don't think that this team is that great, obviously, other than Ashton Janty running all over everybody and scoring. Like, I was a little surprised to see the fact that they were able to air it out a little bit. 150 yards total for Maddox Madsen, but that's because there were a couple of missed plays that could have been a lot bigger for Boise State, and they were very close to being caught or made.
When I look at it, he had 43% completion percentage. If you are holding a opposing quarterback to 43% completion percentage, you should probably win that football game, and you eventually did, right? I can't really ask too much more out of those DBs, the way that the NFL and the way that the college game now is officiated, the way that calls are made. The game is set up for the offense to do well. So if you can hold an opposing quarterback to under 50% completion percentage, that's a big win for me. My big standout over there is always going to be Derek Harmon. I know he only had 4 total tackles. He had 3 quarterback hits, and that's coming from a guy who's playing a 3 tech. When Jordan Birch got his sack, the guy who got in there first, that was Derek Harmon. He made Madsen have to move up into the pocket. Then he had to avoid Tuioti, and then Jordan Birch finally gets
I forgot about
Tuioti.
play. Excuse me.
Every single time it feels like teams try to run up the middle, Derek Harmon is right there in the way. A lot of Ashton Genty's big runs weren't because he was gashing Oregon in the middle. It was because he'd see the big fella right there with Harmon and go, nope, I got to get outside, and he'd bounce it outside. Harmon is a game wrecker, and he can get after the passer. That dude is a savage.
7 lead changes, by the way, throughout this game. Will, I'm not sure I ever remember watching an Oregon Ducks football game with 7 lead changes in it. Like this was back and forth, man. And frankly, I wasn't really scared that the Oregon Ducks were going to lose until probably end of the third, start of the fourth quarter. And it was just way too back and forth for my level of Ducks comfort. But I'm sure that all y'all are happy with the win driving home, listening here on 1080 The Fan and on YouTube as well. We are on YouTube, 1080 AM The Fan. Checking in with the Vancouver Ford text line. You guys give too many excuses for SE play. There are huge problems. You know what? I'll try to react to that with honesty. Like, you're right. There was a lot of SE play today. There were definitely concerns. I didn't like all the mental lapses, like I just mentioned, the roughing the quarterback. You're giving up fumbles. You're allowing way more sacks. I think the fewest sacks allowed in the previous 2 seasons. Oregon led the way in all of college football with 10. They allowed, I think, 7 or 8 total in the first 2 games now with Idaho and Boise State. Yeah, there's a lot of things that scare me, and that's going to the question that I asked. Will, you're not so scared about it, but I am. I'm scared that Oregon is not going to be able to compete in the Big Ten, at least the way that we all thought they were. The hype train that Oregon's been on, I'm a little scared that that's too much. I'm not quite sure if they're struggling, and it is early in the year. I do like to refer to this as the preseason, Will. It's early in the year. They are struggling in their non-conference games, but Still a little frightening, and I'm with you on the text line. No, I'm not trying to give so many excuses. I'm trying to look at the positives, but I will say no, that there is a lot that worries me, and I, for one, am not sure that Oregon is going to have as much success as we thought they were if they continue to play like this going forward into the Big Ten. All right, a couple more segments before we get out of here. We're with you until 1 a.m. on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. When we come back, we'll take a look around the top 25 scoreboard as well as the scoreboard around the rest of the Big 12 and Pac-2, get you some local updates, and we'll revisit our Ducks Game Day secret score. But first, it's time for Ducks Game Day traffic and weather every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
We're still seeing some slowdown. Now it's just north of Salem, so it feels like you guys are all traveling together. Nice little pack there. There's also some slowdown as you get into the city of Portland. Make sure that you're traveling safe. Don't see too many Smokies up that way. It's 63 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy 3 times the size of the policies you had to purchase for your previous mistakes? If so, you need to call Big
Holy
Ruling on the
cow.
field is a fumble recovered by the defense. First down.
How about that?
This is the Pacific Office Automation Post-Game Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Oregon getting the 37-34 win over Boise State as the 7th-ranked team in the country, slipping by the Boise State Broncos. And I would agree also, same texter on the Vancouver Force text line that says they're dropping out of the top 10 because of it. And Will, really quickly before we go over the top 25, do you think, I'm not saying that this is maybe an indictment on like Oregon's play, but after the loss, I keep saying it like it's a loss because it was just such a crappy win. Oregon's win over Idaho in week 1 caused them to drop 4 spots, I'm assuming because they're an FCS team. Boise State, they are a much better team. They are unranked, but most people, as you've said multiple times, consider them to be a legitimate candidate for the college football playoff at the end of the year as the extra school that gets in. So I don't know. Do you think that they're going to drop out of the top 10
No.
because of a 3-point win?
No.
No? Okay.
No, the number 5 team in the country lost at home
Yeah.
to a MAC team. The number 10 team in the country got absolutely blown out by Texas. Now, that being said, I think Texas is really good, so how far are they truly going to drop? You also have to remember the number 4 team in the country had a 1-score lead going into the fourth quarter. Now, that score looks a lot different at the end, but for a large portion of that game, South Florida played with Alabama. By the way, the 8 team in the country that's right behind you, they won 34-27 against Bowling Green, another MACtion team at home, and they were trailing at halftime. So I think you can just start going down the list, and it goes, well, how far are you really going to jump up USC for blowing out Utah State? How far are you really going to jump up Miami for blowing out Florida A&M? How far are you really going to jump up Tennessee for beating NC State? Now, they blew them out, but you just keep going down the list. Oklahoma beat Houston by 4 at home. So the more you go through the list of the 25, who are the 4 teams that are going to jump up and jump ahead of Oregon and knock them out? May you drop to 8, may you drop to 9, maybe. I think more than likely you probably stay where you're at.
Well, let's try to take a look here at the games in the top 25 today. A couple of upsets to talk about, or at least kind of note. Georgia, of course, number 1, getting the easy win over Tennessee Tech, 48-3. Carson Beck with 5 touchdowns in that one. Ohio State, number 2, 56-0 over Western Michigan. You just mentioned it. Number 3, Texas beating number 10 Michigan, 31-12. Quinn Ewers almost 250 yards passing and 3 touchdowns in that one. Alabama getting the win over South Florida, 42-16. The upset, though, number 5, Notre Dame, I was shocked, getting beaten by Northern Illinois, 16-14. It was an unbelievable game, but of course the field goal with 30 seconds remaining. I think it was pretty much a chip shot by Northern Illinois. They are the Huskies as well, by the way, just like the Washington Huskies. The Northern Illinois Huskies getting the upset win over Notre Dame at number 5. 6th-ranked Ole Miss, 52-3 over Middle Tennessee. Of course, Oregon getting the win over Boise State, 37-34. Number 8, Penn State slipping by Bowling Green, 34-27. 9th-ranked Mizzou, 38-0 over Buffalo. Utah at 11, 23-12 over Baylor. 12th-ranked Miami beats Florida A&M 56-9. USC blanking Utah State. They had the backups in by the end of the third quarter, I think, in that one. 48-0 the score there. Tennessee beating number 24 NC State. 14th-ranked Tennessee getting the 51-10 win. And a couple other games that maybe people will care about. Oklahoma, number 15 over Houston, 16-12. And 16th-ranked Oklahoma State surviving against Arkansas. Arkansas put up a pretty good fight in that one, 39-31. And also in the Cy-Hawk Trophy game, the Cy-Hawk rivalry game, Iowa State upsetting number 21 Iowa 20-19. Northern Arizona had it close for a bit, but number 20 Arizona ends up winning 22-20. So yeah, Will, I hear what you're saying, about the Ducks really not moving down just because of the nature of other games in the top 25 this week, but still pretty interesting to see. I cannot believe that Notre Dame is dealing with such an upset early in the year, but hey, under this new world of the college football playoff, doesn't really matter like it used to. In the Big Ten, Indiana getting the 77-3 win over Western Illinois. Duke gets the 2 overtime win over Northwestern, 26-20. Not like Northwestern's going to be good, but it was just a crazy game, crazy finish. Number 2 Ohio State over Western Michigan. I already said that, 56-0. And Illinois upsets number 19 Kansas, 23-17. All right, we got to get out of here. That's a nice scoreboard update from around the world of college football. Before we get out of here for a couple more quick segments, we have to revisit the Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
This Ducks Game Day secret score is 100. That's 100, the length of Noah Whittington's touchdown for a kickoff return for touchdown, Remember the secret score and listen in the 7 a.m. hour Monday morning to Dirt and Sprague for your cue to text in. If you win, you get a $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. More than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Coming up next, we're going to start to wrap it up here. Will and I will give our final takeaways from the game and start to preview ahead to the Civil War in Week 3. Pretty crazy. That's coming up next, but first we're going to get to Ducks game day traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thanks, Jordan. Right now, as you're going through, there's still a little bit of a slowdown in North Salem, so make sure that you go in the speed limit. Don't see any smokies as you travel on home. 63 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it off? Can't afford it?
To the snap, going to go back and hand it off. Pull up the middle, and Genty spins his way to the goal line. Did he get there? No, yep, touchdown, Genty.
This is the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Just a couple of segments left here with Schultze and Will taking it home for Oregon's 37-34 win over Boise State here on 1080 The Fan, 99.5 HD2, the Odyssey app, and on YouTube as well at 1080 AM The Fan. Oregon moving on after their win to Boise State, or against Boise State, to face Oregon State next week in the Civil War in Corvallis. Oregon State is 2-0. They did get the win over San Diego State against the Aztecs down in San Diego today, 21-0. Jam Griffin having another nice day, 18 carries, 89 yards, and a tutty. Anthony Hankerson following that with 71 yards and a tutty as well. Giovanni McCoy throwing for a touchdown. Really loving their quarterback play at Oregon State. So that's going to be an exciting matchup, Will. It's going to be weird seeing the Civil War in the third game of the season. Are you nervous? Do you think this is like a sneaky upset game now that Oregon's kind of had a couple of shaky games to open their season?
No, not at all. I've watched both of Oregon State's games, and I know what Oregon State does really, really well, and that's they run the football.
Run the ball.
What is Oregon's defense built to stop? It's built to stop the run. You have a defensive line that's going to get into the backfield, and they are going to shut that two-headed monster rushing attack down. I get it. You're going to look at the rush yardage this game for Boise State, and a lot of fans are going to go, wow, this D-line can't stop him. No, you went up against a special player who right now seems to be in a zone that few are going to be able to stop. I would view this more as an outlier and less as something along the lines of, oh my goodness, Oregon won't be able to stop Oregon State. They are going to stop the rushing attack. They're going to get after the quarterback. This is a game where, again, all eyes are going to be on Dylan Gabriel, and it's going to be on this offensive line, and are they going to make the fixes they need to make? You don't have to fix everything.
It's true.
But it needs to look better, and it needs to look more up to the offensive line standard that Oregon has set forth the last couple of years.
Well, hopefully Dylan Gabriel can identify blitz next week. Otherwise, we might be in for another close contest. And I'm not saying because Oregon State's good, but when you make those mistakes, whatever team you're playing will, you allow them to stay in the game. All right, we'll be back to wrap it up coming up next, but first, one more Ducks game day traffic and weather report from Will Ortner. Every 10 minutes, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com. Here's Will Ortner.
Thank you, Jordan. If you're still out on the road, there's a little bit of slowdown in Salem. Hope you're already past that. The rest of the way, it's going to be clear sailing until you hit Portland. Don't see too many Smokies. Make sure you get home safe. 63 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 67 degrees and sunny in Corvallis next Saturday when the Ducks take on the Beavers.
Drive home in the Audi SUV of your dreams at
It's good!
Highlights, scores, and more. This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
I did it once. I stepped on the big announcer guy just one time, though. I waited until close to 1 a.m., so I think I'm okay. Schulte and Will sitting in with you for now the final segment of the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Wrapping it up, getting you out of here. We got to go home as well. Oregon getting the 37-34 win today, Will, over Boise State. I say they're a little overhyped. You say they're not.
I'm not saying that they're not overhyped.
Okay.
They got things that they need to fix, but you know what? I'm not going to say that the sky is falling yet.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens against Oregon State in the Civil War. 12:30 kickoff next week right here on 1080 The Fan. Thank you all so much for joining us. That's going to do it. Don't miss Dirt and Sprague live Monday morning at 6. For Will Ortner, I'm Schulte. Thanks for listening to our coverage of Oregon's 37-34 win over Boise State. And now they get ready for the Civil War in Corvallis. Stay safe out there, sports fans, and go Ducks. You've been listening to 1080 The Fan.
This has been the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show, brought to you